Texas Tuesday live stream on the On Texas Football channel. Welcome in, everybody. Aaron Hogan, Rod Baber, C.J. Vogel on this spring break Tuesday. For a lot of you, if you're enjoying that, certainly do. We got a lot to do for the next hour plus with you on Texas Football. We've got, in the next week coming up, we've got a week that includes Longhorn basketball with a game tomorrow night and hopefully a game Friday. Maybe we'll game Sunday. We'll preview the Longhorn run, and all Texas women also open up play at the Moody Center. Texas baseball playing right now. And they will also host a huge series with LSU this weekend at the Dish. And, of course, starting next week on Tuesday, it'll be the start of spring practice. So between now and our next Tuesday live stream, a lot going to happen in Longhorn Nation and a lot to preview, lots to talk about on this windy night. Just got some text about the wind watching the UT baseball game right now. The gusty south winds are prevalent as they play UTSA right now. It's 2-1 early in that game. The Roadrunners lead that ball game, but the wind blowing out to left field heavily with the gusty winds all through West Texas into Central Texas and beyond. That's supposed to die down. I will say as a little PSA, I think you all know this, but red flag warning out there, so be careful. No sparks of any kind, no fire, no cigarette butts. It'll go quick and will cause a problem pretty darn fast. But happy to be back. Had a couple weeks out and spent some time in the Cactus League, guys, touching some baseball, but ready to go on a Tuesday. CJ, Rod, how we doing?
Doing good.
Best time of the year right now. I mean, I'd just be glued to I got to go to a wedding this weekend.
Oh, okay.
Got to go to a wedding, but other than that, man, I'll be glued. I got as many screens as possible for the next couple of days. It's one of my favorites of the entire year.
One bracket guy. He's a one bracket.
One bracket. That's it.
Me too. And I wait till Thursday morning to fill it out. I fill it out like after I absorb all of it, and then I fill one out, and that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I've been trying to juggle mine today, and it was a bad idea to do it today because I did nothing. I did nothing today. I was sitting there over at On Texas Football trying to discuss with the fellas. We were in the lab collectively going through what games we liked, and I came to the realization I don't like any of these games. I don't like any of my bracket. I think this is how it's going to go every single year because every year I look at it and say, okay, I feel like I watched enough or the most college basketball I've ever watched. By the time, game 5 comes rolling around, look, I'm cooked. I'm toast.
Oh, chalky. Look at it. A lot of chalk. No upset.
Did you take a winner? Who's your winner? Did you take Florida, Auburn, Alabama? Who's your winner here? Duke? CJ?
I've got Florida right now.
That's where I'm leaning.
I like Florida. But, Aaron, here's the deal. I've picked a winner or my winner in 4 of the last 5. I could go find the receipts. 4 of the last 5 my picks for March Madness. They haven't made it out of the first round. So I don't know. I had Kentucky a couple years ago when they lost to the middle school up in New Jersey, St. Peter's. I was like, what is going on, man? I just can't find success here at all. Virginia, they lose as the number 1 lead to whoever was at VCU at the time. My goodness. This is the year.
This might be the year. Well, I will say, we talk about the changing landscape of college athletics, and Rod, you talk about the player empowerment era and transfers and NIL and dollars and all that. I will say, metrics don't lie. In the Ken Pom rankings, right, Ken Pomeroy, I find this fascinating. The last 25 years, before this year, only 4 teams had entered the tournament with a plus 35 total number in the Ken Pom metrics, right? Plus 35, which is, you're really good in everything. And those 4 teams, 2 of them won the national title. 1 made the championship game. Virginia and Duke won the title. I think it was Gonzaga that was up there, and they lost to Baylor in the championship game. And there was a Kentucky team that had plus 35. This year, all 4 of the 1 seeds are plus 35. So all 4 of them are that good. That's how deep this is. It's, in a normal year, it feels like, look at the Ken Pom metrics, the 2 seeds would be 1 seeds. I mean, all the 4 1 seeds are powerhouses, man. Florida and Auburn and Duke, Houston, these are really good teams. And then, then if you get to that number 2 line, you're talking about Tom Izzo and Michigan State. You're talking about St. John's and Rick Pitino back in the mix. It is Alabama, I think, is a powerhouse that could score with anybody and get it going. But I kind of like Florida too. What do you guys think about the Longhorns tomorrow night against Xavier? I mean, it's a team in Xavier that's got some guys. I guess 6'9" forward that's 17 a game. That 5th-year guy that's going to give Texas trouble. I think they got a wing that's really explosive. But Texas, has a chance to win this ball game. Is healthy. What's your early lean tomorrow in Dayton against a Xavier team that's only about 45 minutes down the road there in Cincinnati?
Call me crazy, and
Take them.
I truly see it, Aaron, but here we are. I mean, my March Madness takes are flying. I
Take them.
like how Texas has been playing basketball recently.
Mm-hmm.
I do, and I think the insertion of Kendall Weaver into the lineup is a big reason for that. So it's not that I think this team is brand new. It's not, right? We know their faults, right? They're not going to be a team that physically imposes their will down by the basket. We know that they're going to give up offensive rebounds. At times, fouls and turnovers can be frustrating. Inbounding the basketball, I won't even go down that route. But right now, with the way that they've been playing and the way that they've had to play, right, with their back against the wall with Weaver back in the lineup, I kind of like it. Tremont Mark kind of taking over that point guard, ball handling position for the Longhorns on the offensive side of the ball. I like the way that they're playing. I'm not going to say that they're going to go on a run. And look, again, there's another conversation to be had about what RT needs to have happen in March. But right now, I liked what I saw over the last, 160 minutes or so, 200 minutes that they've played basketball with Kendall Weaver in. So I can't say for certainty that I think that they're going to go on a run, but I like them tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm taking tournament Terry for tomorrow night. I'll take the tournament Terry. I don't know after that. Then we can, we can have a different conversation. But I don't know. I agree with CJ. I think one of the biggest difference has them been putting Tremont Mark at the point. Yeah. That's to me, it's kind of changed the entire dynamic of the team offensively. And I think they're good enough to beat Xavier. Now, after that, then we're talking about something else entirely.
Yeah, well, then it's Illinois as a 6th seed. Yeah. They're as schizophrenic as any team. They got a couple NBA dudes, but they can be great and blow you out, or they can get blown out. That's kind of how they are. Brad Underwood's team. So first things first though. Sean Miller, Xavier squad, and the one bad matchup I don't like, the kid Zach Fremantle, who's a 6'9", 5th-year senior that can. Really good low post moves. He's a white guy when we say that he's crafty around the basket. You know what I'm talking about? He's crafty around the ball, and he can find a way to get the ball in the bucket. Scores 17, 18 a game. And they got a kid, Conway, that transferred in from Indiana State. He's their most explosive dude. He had 38 against Marquette in the Big East tournament. Ryan Conwell, he's 45% from the floor, 43% from 3, 6'4" wing. He's the guy that really got to get. So you got those two, kind of a combo that you got to get your hands around. And the matchup that I don't like for Texas guys is, this is a really good shooting Xavier team. They're 80% from the foul line and 40% from 3. Yeah. And Texas fouls more than any team in the SEC. So, if you're sending them to the charity stripe, unlike A&M in that SEC title game, they're not going to miss a lot of free throws. So that'll be, I'm sure Sean Miller is thinking about attacking. And CJ, this watching this team all year. If you get Caden Shedrick in foul trouble, and that's what Fremantle can do, you got some trouble because they don't really have much behind him. I'm assuming that's a Sean Miller strategy. Hey, let's get their one big in foul trouble and see if we can, go down low and bang it. But Texas, I think, has the and I agree with all what you guys said about putting Mark at the point. They seem to have played downhill in Nashville. They're attacking the basket, shot over 30 free throws in both of those games. The win over A&M, the win over Vanderbilt. So I like that. They got to keep that going. They got to stay out of foul trouble themselves and not let this team kill them at the foul line because Xavier can shoot the foul shots.
Yeah, and that was, to your point, Aaron, one thing that Texas kind of had the luxury of when playing Texas A&M is, aside from Wade Taylor, who I think, ended up 18 of 19 or something crazy from the line in that game, there were some really timely misses where on the flip side, Texas was making a lot of their free throws. Right? We could talk about Caden Shedrick going 10 for 10 at the line, something I didn't necessarily know that he had in his bag. Of course, he was a 64% shooter coming into that game. So if that's the timeliness, the timely makes that Texas is bringing with them into the tournament, who knows what might end up happening. But tomorrow specifically, protecting the three-point line is going to be huge. And I look back a long ways to the season opener, right? It's been a bit of an issue for Texas in a lot of games, right? That Ohio State game, which Ohio State missed the tournament by the bubble as well, but they were splashing. They had wide open threes all the way through. You start looking at some of these losses that Texas just came up a little bit short on. It would have been great for them to be able to be a little bit more efficient on the three-point line, defending, making their shots. Right now, I like Trey Johnson shooting the ball, but you also got to be sure that he's not out shooting you from games because that's kind of been a tendency of his recently as well.
Yeah, well, I think all that's right on. And Sean Miller is a really good coach. He was at Arizona after leaving Xavier, came back to Xavier after some trouble at Arizona, but really high-level coach. And the coaching conversation will surround Rodney Terry. Kirk Bowles of the Houston Chronicle reporting over the weekend that Rodney Terry not only has to make the tournament, which they did by the hair of their chinny chin, they're in. Well, actually, they've got to play their way into the tournament. But Kirk Bowles and I think it was Chip Brown reporting that they've got to make a run. So into the second weekend, which would mean now 3 wins tonight, tomorrow night, and then
2 weekends. A run is 3 wins. A run ain't 2. A run, a back-to-back, that's just consecutive wins. A run is 3. So if they got to run, that means he's got to win 3.
Yeah, well, I think CD, if you read between the lines, feels like when they went 17-14, lost that game to OU at the end of the year, I had heard that and been told that the conversations about a buyout had begun behind the scenes because I don't think CDC thought they were going to make that tournament. The 2 wins in Nashville obviously got them in and gave them the opportunity by barely. Now they got to go show it and win that ball game. So we'll see. And obviously we could come in here next Tuesday. If Texas is still playing, Rodney Terry's probably still the coach. If he's not, who knows? I mean, I think the way Kirk Bowles wrote it in the Houston Chronicle is he's not the alpha coach to lead Texas moving forward. He deserved the opportunity after the Chris Beard mess, but that you see that the way this tournament works, you've got to have an alpha at the top. I mean, it's to recruit Rod and bring in NIL dollars and get your own fan base fired up. Because yes, there's the tournament success, but there's also filling the Moody Center every night and creating excitement around the program. And it really wasn't this year. The women's program had more sellouts and more excitement around it with Vic Schaefer this year. And I'm sure that's something that CDC's looking at.
Well, you just said, look at Vic Schaefer, right? You talk about lead dog, big dog at the top, right, of the program. That's what Vic Schaefer is. I mean, hell, I want to play for Vic Schaefer, no matter what the hell he's coaching. It don't matter. And there so is an excitement, man. You have Vic Schaefer on, and he creates that kind of buzz. And, Rodney Terry hasn't been able to do that. And that's, that's something Chris Beard was actually really good at when he was here, kind of getting the fan base and getting the students, right, to invest in the program. And that's important. And that's something, at Texas, in addition to winning games and competing for championships, you got to wear a lot of other hats. And the other hats is, hey, man, you like marketing and promotions. Sometimes you got to market and promote your program. I saw Sark at the rodeo, at the
Houston rodeo.
One right at the Houston rodeo because Houston is one of the top 5 markets for producing NFL talent in the country. That's why he's at the Houston rodeo. He's like, yeehaw, all right. So it's West Coast, all right. So he ain't used to it, but he understands. Hey, you know what? That's the game you got to play, and so that's part of it too with Rodney Terry. Once you get the wins, you also got to do other things to make sure you're promoting the program and building the brand. And I think that's something else that Texas. Thank you very much, Matthew. Look at him.
The black hat.
They got that jean shirt. What do you got on there? Sark dresses. Sark is a fashionista, right? His either whether it's L'Oreal that was dressing him or Sark's always got the best shoes, like the nicest shoes on. Like he turns heads with his outfits, that kind of stuff. Look at him right there. Did that look natural to you? Like Sark, it's like he picked out a nice fit. No, Sark is there at the rodeo. Probably his first time at the rodeo. No, the guy never had a corn dog, y'all. All right. His first time having a corn dog was after Texas OU a couple years ago. Like that's Sark, all right. So he is there because he understands the assignment. And the same thing right there, man. You got to understand the assignment too.
That reminds me of
he looks like a kid from California in a cowboy hat. I will say that.
I was going to say the same thing. Remember going up to the Cotton Bowl for the media availabilities up there, and you had Coach Flood and you had Kwiatkowski up there as well, all wearing their cowboy hats. And it's like, hold on, you just came from the Pacific Northwest and you came from New Jersey, so where is this cowboy feng shui coming from? But look, if you're at Texas, you got to play the part. You got to get the people amped up. You got to play into the personality just a little bit. And to your point, Aaron, look, I totally agree with you. For Rodney Terry, it's not just the wins and losses, right? That's great. You're going to want to win games, right? I'm not going to deny that. But beyond that, if you have a competitive team, if you have a fun team to watch, if you have a team that people will get up off their couch on a Tuesday night and go watch college basketball for, well, at home, we see how important home games are in college basketball. Texas had 6 losses at Moody Center. You were telling me that they're even in this position right now. If there was a little bit more excitement earlier in the year, that atmosphere at Moody Center, maybe just a little bit more palpable, you'll have those wins fall into your lap more and more at home if you have the home crowd behind you. And that was lacking. It's been lacking. And I have a hard time believing it's going to be anything better next year unless Texas goes on a crazy run this year in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, if they play in the next, we're on this Tuesday live stream next week, and they're still playing, and they've beaten Kentucky and Illinois and Xavier, it's going to be because that at that point that should get the fan base fired up. And I will agree with what you just said. I know when Chris Beard was the coach, UT, he actually reached out to the radio show I was on at the time, wanted to be on every week and talk, and he did the fireside chats with the students, and he did the McConaughey stuff. I mean, he did things to embrace himself to the students, and I think Rodney's still trying to do that. And at point of fact, in this day and age in college athletics, if you can't fire up and loosen the purse of the NIL from the boosters, you can't construct the roster you want. I mean, it's just a fact. And I think David Pierce, when he was at baseball, was kind of in the same spot. All of a sudden, you bring in a Jim Schlossnagle, people get fired up, and all of a sudden you can chase a different type of player in this day and age of college athletics. So there's a multi-layer to it. And, as somebody said to me, the fair is in Dallas every October. It's not talking about fair. It's just kind of is. As much as everybody likes Rodney Terry, this is kind of the way it goes. And, if you look at the final, if you're filling out your brackets, it's Rick Pitino and it's Bruce Pearl and it's, Tom Izzo. I mean, it's the alphas of college basketball. And does Rodney Terry fit that? Maybe he could, but so far through 2 years of replacing Chris Beard, the rosters have not been good enough and the fan base not fired up enough for the product. And then I think we started this conversation talking about Vic Schaefer because, that they've got sellouts all the time and they're fired up. They have a chance to win the national title this year as a number 1 overall seed or number 2 overall seed in the tournament. All right, let's get to some football here coming up. Texas basketball.
One other thing, though, E, and that's why a lot of people are on board, though, to CJ's point, that if you do have to replace Rodney Terry, bring in an offensive-minded coach. That, because that's what the beauty of Texas football is. And I said this a long time ago. Longhorn fans, they actually like Sark's offense. You've been covering Texas a long time, E. Longhorn fans didn't like Greg Davis's offense. They really didn't. They complained about it constantly. It set records and broke records. Longhorn fans constantly complained about Greg Davis' offense, lack of creativity, lack of innovation, complained about it. I experienced it when I was here with Chris Sims. They complained about it when Vince Young was here, and then they stopped complaining about it because they started winning so many games. They complained about it with Colt. They complained about it all the time because they didn't like the offense. It was the last offense actually because they complained about Makovic's offense. The last offense that Longhorn fans really, really liked was probably you got to go all the way back to Darryl K. Royer where they really, really liked the offense. Sark's offense, whether you agree with him as his strategy in games, different, that kind of thing, or whether you talk about him building a program, you can disagree or agree with all that. But in terms of his offensive, stylistically and philosophically, ideologically, his offense is aesthetically pleasing. Right. They like it. They enjoy watching Sark's offense, and that matters. It matters. It puts butts in seats. People like offense. People don't like defense.
No, right? Easier to complain about a defensive coordinator than it is an offensive coordinator, and that's the point, Rod. To add to what you're saying. Look, Ben McCollum over at Drake has built one of the best defensive-led programs in college basketball. Do I want Texas to hire him? He wins games? Probably not, because I don't want to watch a 55-51 game every single weekend. Again, it results in wins, but it's not fun, right? And when your season does inevitably end, all you're going to sit there and say, well, they should have scored more points. But that's not the MO of the team, and that's not exactly why the philosophy is there. So I'm with you. Somebody offensive-led, I can always complain about defense because, look, all you say in basketball is say, hey, that's a tough shot, tip your cap to the opposing team, move on. So you find me somebody that knows how to run the offense, whether it be RT, whether it be somebody that Texas eventually goes out and finds again. But I'm with you 100%.
Well, think about the conference. And when you go to the SEC in football, you got to have the lines of scrimmage, right? If you don't, you're not going to compete in football. Baseball, got to have your pitching staff, and you got to be deep there because it's the lineups are so brutal. In basketball, you got to score. I mean, Florida scores 88 points a game. I mean, Alabama, Auburn, these teams score a lot of points. You've got to be able to score the basketball. Bruce Pearl's teams defend, but they also you got to be in 85, 88 kind of thing to beat those teams. And firepower matters, and that's where you're hearing the name Billy Donovan a little bit out there as a guy that's available. He's got SEC ties, obviously back to his Florida days, and has NBA. So there's names for sure, but we'll see. I mean, I'm sure CDC at this point, Texas fans just trust CDC. Okay, he's going to hire the right coach when he does hire the coach, if he does have to hire a coach in that spot. But Rodney can coach his way through it. We'll see coming up by next Tuesday. Also, by next Tuesday, the Longhorns will open spring practice, and we'll dive into that here coming up. Speaking of Steve Sarkisian at the rodeo, we'll get to some other mock drafts that are out as well. Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah both dropped mock drafts today that are divergent in places as far as the Longhorns go, but it's interesting at the top. We'll get to that. But, Rod, tell them about Andy Ludicky, one of our key partners here on a Tuesday night, every Tuesday night here on Texas Football.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I appreciate that. And appreciate Andy Ludicky and his team as well. If you're looking to diversify, you may be someone like me that has their hands in multiple different businesses. Well, Andy, he can help you diversify by finding you different businesses that will fit your time allotment and your financial goals. A lot of you have been stuck in the corporate rat race with, 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you make or your schedule in general. You call Andy today. He will take you through a detailed process to help you find different businesses that will fit your skill sets and your financial goals. We understand, and he understands, that franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your financial destiny, just give Andy a call today, 404-973-9901. That's 404-973-9901. Or you can visit him online at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Just reach out to him via email at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And we appreciate Andy Ludicky and his team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football.
Every Tuesday night, we appreciate it. Sophisticated Silly up here visiting Rod. He says hi. There we go. Thank you, CB, man.
Tell her I said what's up, CB. And CB, I'm glad you're recovering, man. I just saw in the chat that you had a minor surgery or something like that.
Boy.
Surgery, whatever, minor, major, whatever. I'm just glad you're okay. All right. So glad you're back with us, CB. No doubt. Get well.
All right, guys, here we go. Texas spring football next Tuesday, and we know it's going to be more of the professional OTA mindset, and Sark trying to preserve his team for the big picture and get back to hitting and going full contact and whatnot come August to get ready for the SEC season. But at the end, we'll get to see these freshmen hit the field, and I'm assuming Sark's going to do it kind of like the NFL, and that'll be kind of like you went to some rookie OTAs, Rod, when there's all the rookies together, no veterans. They get their feet wet. They kind of see what the pace of practice looks like and how everything works, and really start to work on some of the things they've been studying in their playbook, and then do that for a few days. Then the next weekend you bring in. And the next week you bring in the veterans and mix everybody together. And I'm sure that's part of it. But the young guys, CJ and Rod, 27 or 28 new faces. Here's one thing we know with Sark. Every year he's been here, there's been a freshman All-American at Texas. There's been Xavier Worthy in year 1, Kelvin Banks year 2, Anthony Hill, Colin Simmons. There's going to be one.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Is there a guess of who that might be? Do you have a best guess of who, if they're going to have in 2025 a freshman that makes a splash like Colin Simmons and the Kelvin Banks, Xavier Worthy before them, Anthony Hill, who would be your best guess right now?
That's a great question.
I got 2. So CJ, you go. I'm gonna see if you get one. Maybe I'll get the other. I got 2 of them.
Oh, it's a great question because I'm looking at the 2 deep right now saying, where's Texas weak? Where can a young guy get on the field, get on campus, get acclimated, and then immediately make an instant impact, right? Xavier Worthy, Texas didn't really have any other wide receivers. With Anthony Hill, look, he very clearly and quickly won that spot. Colin Simmons, very much the same.
Kelvin Banks, they had to have a left tackle.
Yeah. The one spot that is up for grabs or unknown is defensive tackle still. And I know that's a tough place to walk in and be an All-American, but look, Justice Terry and kind of the things that we're hearing behind the scenes, that's a guy that's very professional in his approach to college football. That's the way that he wants to walk in, take every workout as seriously as possible. He does the extra work. Of course, 5-star pedigree guy. He's going to have some sort of path to the field early on. What can he do when on the field? Will he be ready by Ohio State? Maybe not, but you start looking at the rest of that SEC slate, and I certainly think that you're going to be looking at a really, really talented interior defensive lineman year 1. And it's just like a Colin Simmons, just like a Kelvin Banks, just like an Anthony Hill. You're going to be sitting there by the end of the year saying, oh, thank God we got him for 2 more years. So I'm going to go with Justice Terry here just because of that path to the field is unlike many of the other positions with really talented guys available for them now.
Well, and Rod, I want yours, but I think that what you said about Justice Terry and the way he goes to work, I mean, that's important to Sark and his staff. I mean, he talked about Xavier Worthy walking in with a real work ethic to start. Kelvin Banks just had such a maturity to him of how he walked in and approached the game. And that's what it takes, Rod. You gotta act like a veteran, even though you're 18 years old. You gotta walk the walk if you're going to earn those reps. And then in a place like defensive tackle, you've got to be able to be physical enough, be muscle, strong enough to handle that. He does look like a bit of a man child at 18. Who's the guy that you're looking at that could push for, being a blow up freshman?
Yep. And to CJ's point, just to add to it, I think that NASCAR, honestly, I said Justice Terry should be on the NASCAR package, and he should, because all you're doing is pass rushing. It's third and long usually when they utilize the NASCAR package, and that's why Colin Simmons, he just was an absolute terror on that package, because it was able to put him in a position where he didn't have to process too much. See quarterback, go get quarterback. Yep. And I think Justice Terry, instead of having to learn how to anchor and deal with the run game, usually for young guys, that's their biggest toughest transition. Hey, how I'm gonna hold up as a run defender, all right, at the next level. Pass rush, though, I mean, he might be already a guy that can go win on a third and long situation when everybody out there knows that they're throwing the football. So I think you should put him in a NASCAR just like you did for Colin Simmons last year. And I'll go with potentially, if we're just looking at Pat to the field, because I was thinking about it could be, wide out. One of those young wideouts is going to see the field. Yep. I think potentially. But I don't know if they could be an all-American, because as CJ's kind of pointed out, he's predicting 1,000-yard season for Wingo. Then you got DeAndre Moore. I don't know if you're going to be able to stack the productivity to be able to have that kind of blockbuster campaign. So you got to get a lot of reps at it. And I'm thinking, pedigree plus reps. Cade Phillips, we don't know what will happen opposite Malik Muhammad. We just don't know. Now, we believe Kobe Black has the inside track, because last year they seem to favor him more over Warren Robeson, opposite Malik Muhammad. So not saying that Warren Robeson won't, make a comeback here and have a strong spring, but it seems like Kobe Black had the inside track. But if Kobe Black, if is not showing up, all right, and they don't see him necessarily ascend this spring, 5-star pedigree in Cade Phillips. I know the young man's got the competitive sickness. I got a chance to see that up close and personal, coaching him at camp. He can straight up just play man to man and potentially bump and run. I told you guys my prediction, they're going to play more man, I think, this season, and potentially more press man. They may play a little bit more press man, potentially situationally, and that lends itself to young guys being able to play, because to me, coverage is something, a lot of it is programmed early or it's innate. Guy can just, guy got coverage skills. He can just go cover man to man. All right. Hard to teach a guy that skill. You can get better at it, but hey, man, if you can cover, and he can. And if they want to play more man to man, they may figure, let's take our lumps with this young DB, because when we do start becoming a team that can play more man to man, and he learns the pattern match, like, the foundation basically, and the pattern match discipline, the eye discipline of it, he'll be, all of it will come together, and then we'll have ourselves an all caliber SEC type corner. So I'll throw out a Cade Phillips potentially, because if he ends up winning that spot or even splitting time at that spot, he could end up being a freshman All-American potentially if he plays to a certain standard. And I think he's capable of it. I mean, he's a 5-star guy coming in.
CJ, two guys I want to ask you about, because I like those two a lot. Obviously, path to the field and playing time is, you can't maybe be an All-American without playing time. Jonah Williams would be a name people would mention, but, Michael Taft's back. Derek Williams will be back and healthy. And, Jelani McDonald, that's a hard path to the field with Dwayne Akina back there now coming in. Two things. Offensive line, we know there are 4 new starters. So if there's an offensive lineman that could come in, and I know they're going to probably go experience there, but that would be a kind of a Nick Brooks kind of thing out of Georgia. There's this massive guy. Mm-hmm. And then I'm just really intrigued by this Michael Terry out of San Antonio. I know you've seen him. Could Michael Terry be kind of a gadget player? I just remember early, because they kind of had to. Savion Red became Wildcat quarterback. doing all types of things. Michael Terry did all that down at Alamo Heights, did he not? Played quarterback, played receiver, running back at times, just an elite athlete, but he's also 6'3" and 210, 215. That could be a guy that Sark's looking at. He's got his base offense. Could we use a Michael Terry as just kind of a weapon to attack people because he is such a freak?
Yeah, absolutely. Michael Terry, it's going to be really fun to follow him throughout his career at Texas. Starting at wide receiver, that's going to be a crowded room with bodies. Now, who separates themselves? Terry was the first to get to campus for the bowl practices back in December. Does that necessarily mean he has a leg up? Maybe, maybe not, right? He was working scout team at the time. But the more that you add, the more that you're around the program, the more that you familiarize yourself with Arch Manning, the system, Sarkisian, et cetera, the better that you're going to have an opportunity to progress into the offense. And look, that's a heck of an athlete. Does he stay at wide receiver or doesn't? That's a later conversation, I would say. But I absolutely think that he's going to be somebody that is utilized in a number of different positions this year. Now, how quickly is the big question. But yeah, Aaron, I think that's a really interesting one because, again, Texas, outside of DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo, they don't have a career reception on the roster right now. Now, of course, I think Parker Livingstone, maybe an Aaron Butler in that next tier, but it's basically completely wide open until Texas goes out and adds somebody from the portal, which I still believe that they're going to do. So Michael Terry's one because of his position versatility. Another one I wanted to mention, and yes, I do think Nick Brooks is pushing for a second string spot at the moment. The other guy I wanted to mention, and it's tough not being here specifically for spring football, but Nick Townsend, I think, is going to find the field at some point at tight end. Will that be enough to scratch the All-American surface? Maybe not, but look, we haven't seen a Gunnar Helm. We haven't seen a Jatavian Sanders. We haven't seen really even a Jordan Washington scratch the two deep as a true freshman. I think you're going to see Nick Townsend next year on the field as a true freshman. And I think Texas fans are going to like him a lot.
I like him.
Well, and as we said, maybe this is the year that they don't have a freshman All-American because they don't have a spot for one, right? They built it so much with the recruiting, and this is kind of a year where guys are ready to step in and step up. As we said, with Xavier Worthy, Kelvin Banks, even Anthony Hill, they were necessities. I don't know if there's a necessity. Justice Terry, probably the most. The others would be kind of luxuries at this point. That's where the talent level is in this program right now, headed to spring practice next week. Hey, we'll pick up the football. We got Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah mock drafts, where the Longhorns are going to land. We'll dive into that. But Rod, tell them one more time for the first time about a new client or sponsor this week and partner. Talk about March Madness with us.
Yes, sir. That's right. March Madness is here, and so is the Ernie Tourney, the first ever intercollegiate bracket challenge. So think about this, folks. If you think you got the best bracket, you can prove it, all right, against Oklahoma fans, Baylor fans, Texas A&M fans, and the entire Big 12 and SEC. The schools that have the most points, they'll take home the Ernie Cup, and the highest individual scoring bracket will actually win a $5,000 prize. Texas fans, this is your chance to show your knowledge. Don't let OU, A&M, or anyone else take the crown. Rep your school and your fandom and bring the Ernie Cup home. Download the Ernie Sports app or go to Ernie.com to enter right now. That's the Ernie Sports app, or go to Ernie.com to enter right now and hook them and show your fandom and pride with Ernie.com.
That's really cool. I like that a lot. That sounds you want to compete against your it's like the bars where you do the trivia night and you're competing against bars from all over the city.
Oh yeah.
Game and you want to win and they fan pride. Let's step on it.
Damn right.
Doesn't sound like CJ you're going to put your bracket into the Ernie challenge. You don't like your bracket at all.
Well, look, if it's a school thing, I might be dragging us down a little bit, so
A quick update from the dish. Texas baseball up 5-2 now. Wind blowing out, and long game's only the third inning here, and there a lot of pitches already for the Roadrunners. Texas wearing down that pitching staff. Longhorns looking to make it 18 in a row ahead of that series with LSU this weekend.
Crazy.
What a middle weekend while you're watching all the March Madness. And we whittle it from 64 to 16 by Monday. That LSU series, guys, is going to be something. I mean, LSU was number one, but Tennessee's just too dominant right now, so they move up. But that's 1-2 in the country, and Texas is on an 18-game win streak. And the one loss they had, came into the 10th inning, the worst game of the year against Louisville. They had the lead with 2 outs to play. So that's going to be a super regional atmosphere in March. That's crazy. That's what the SEC brings. We see in basketball with 14 tournament teams. But we were talking about this a little bit this morning, guys. Can you imagine? Because we had a guest on that picked Alabama to win the national title.
Oh, wow.
And which Nate Oates' team, I mean, they could. I mean, they're talented. Can you imagine in a year where the SEC doesn't have a team play for the football national title, the SEC could have the baseball national champion, softball, men's and women's basketball, and they don't get a football. They don't even get into the championship game in football. We got to
tides of turn. No pun intended there, obviously, with Alabama. But hey, yeah, I mean, with the way that they, as in the SEC, has approached the basketball landscape this year, Ian, I don't know if I've ever seen this. Right, 14 teams out of the 16 making it in. Texas just by a hair, of course, but the firepower up at the top. I've been pulling my hair out trying to predict this bracket, and Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Tennessee. There's so much firepower amongst the 4 of those top teams that I just don't know. So it's crazy. Of course, you look at Texas, you look at South Carolina in women's basketball. Texas, again, in the conversation for being a top 10 program, hosting number 2 LSU. Florida's up at the top. Tennessee, all in baseball. And, of course, the Lady Longhorns up at number 1 in softball, too. And there, we finally got some inclusion of Oklahoma in that conversation as well in softball. But it's a heck of a run for the SEC right now. And Texas, for the most part, right in the thick of all of this. And you got to love this, right? Yeah. We always talk about the good times on campus. You're in one now.
Hey, where are you guys on the national narrative conversation after Ohio State beat Notre Dame for the national title? That the SEC has slid back. Like, I mean, that NIL has taken an impact. And I'm of the opinion it was kind of a 1-year deal where Georgia, Carson Beck wasn't as good as planned. And, Nick Saban left Alabama and Kalen DeBoer is trying to get his feet on the ground there. And, you lose a Caleb Downs, you lose some really good players out of the portal at Alabama. And so that led to some issues for them. Brian Kelly at LSU, he talked about this week, actually, that they've doubled their NIL investment this year because he felt like last year they weren't ready for that because they wanted to let some young guys play. They didn't want to bring in people and not let them develop. They wanted to get some young guys some experience. Maybe they took some lumps on that spot, but now they're going to double their NIL investment. Is that overblown nationally that people saying the SEC slid, or do you think it's a real thing?
I think I will say this. I think there are a lot of predictions about what was going to happen when, obviously with the changing landscape of college sports and NIL and transfer portal, once it became the true law of the land. There are a lot of predictions about what's going to happen, the separation of the have and the have-nots, that kind of thing. But I don't know if it was correct, right? I think there are a lot of unexpected, unintended, either consequences or byproducts of all the changes. I mean, think about this, right? The schools that were the new additions to these conferences, they all did really well. Mm-hmm. Right, in their first year, and the narrative was, they were coming from weaker conferences, so coming to these, these more competitive conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, and even to the Big 12. Oh man, those teams are going to struggle to acclimate to the ecosystem of this, this new competitive level. And some of them did, but not for the most part. Actually, they surprised everybody, right? Go look at the Heisman. Go look at the Heisman finalists. Look at that list. They weren't even highly recruited. Obviously Travis Hunter is a little bit different. But go look at it. Ashton Jeanty and
Cam Ward,
Gabriel and Cam Ward. Go look at the top quarterbacks coming out. Shadur and Cam Ward.
Yeah,
right? It's something weird is happening, and I don't know if we have a grasp on it yet. I don't know if we know exactly, how the new landscape is going to look. I am sure that of course, the Big Ten, the SEC are going to reign supreme. But I'll admit there are some things happening that I didn't see, and maybe it is an outlier. I mean, we're talking about an aberration, but nobody saw a lot of that stuff coming. That the new teams to the conferences would acclimate so well, and that some of this talent that is trickling up from the lower levels would actually excel at the highest levels. Like guys like Cam Scatterbo, you're like, what the hell? That guy came from where? Right? You're like Pavia. It's like something weird is going. There's some other stuff going on here too, and maybe it's just that there's so much talent out there that you can just It's like the NFL, right? It's like the NFL. Go look at how many undrafted free agents. I believe like a third of NFL rosters is undrafted free agents or guys who were drafted like the 6th to 7th round or later. Because the NFL, even with all the money, they have a $20 billion a year business, and they still get it wrong. They got all this money into the evaluation and the process, and they still get it wrong. They still overlook some guys like, oh, didn't know that guy could play. Our bad. And it's like, damn. So I just think it's not as easy as I think people thought it would be. That hey, if you got all the money and you got the resources, that you automatically are going to be, obviously the best teams and the most competitive teams. That I think that is going to, over time, that is going to play out. But right now, as everybody's adjusting, and some people are smarter about, capitalizing and maximizing these resources and being ahead of these new changes and being very progressive, you can tell that not everybody is adapting well and acclimating well to it.
Yeah, and I think that's. I want to your thoughts on that, CJ, because I think it's a fascinating conversation. Because Indiana comes in with a new coach, and everybody's got a front office now. Everybody's got evaluators. Everybody's scouting, and so you mentioned Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia. They go and get an offensive mind in Jerry Kill that comes in with the quarterback, and they bring kind of the whole new mindset to Vanderbilt, and all of a sudden they're good. Indiana did. Kurt Cignetti brings kind of his whole crew from. His previous stop, and all of a sudden they're a competitor in the Big Ten in a big way, while Alabama's sliding back and Michigan sliding back because of the loss of an elite coach. Georgia slides back just a little bit. LSU doesn't go all in with the investment. A&M's not living up to the standard. To your point of the new schools, CJ and Rod, I mean, Texas came in from the Big 12 and played for the championship. Arizona State comes in from the Pac-12. Oregon comes in and wins the Big Ten. SMU joins the ACC and plays for the championship. I think it's great, and I do think there's a lot of talent, and people are doing a better job of finding that talent. Now that talent is accessible; they can move. Yep. They're not locked in, and it's spreading some talent around. So there's a little bit more parity, which I think is good. We may never see another, Alabama-like run that Nick Saban went on, in his run at Alabama. You may not see that. It's going to be more and more difficult to do. It's going to be like Ohio State going all in and really realizing they have a team and go get it. And maybe it's Penn State this year that's gone all in. They're going to bringing in Jim Knowles and kind of maxing out with Drew Aller coming back and their backfield coming back. I mean, that's kind of the new idea that when you feel like you've got a team that can strike it, leave no stone unturned and go get it. I think that's pretty fascinating too, which is going to lead to not one team dominating the way Alabama or Georgia did for long stretches.
Yeah, I think you're going to maybe 30, 40 years, you're going to look back at that Alabama run through the teens and think, oh, that's must have been what it felt like for UCLA with John Wooden back in, was that the 60s, right? You just look at champions by year when you're sorting on Basketball Reference and you're saying, God, it must have just – no one must have even cared because the same thing happened every year, and that's no longer the case, right? We saw it right away with Indiana making really their first 10-win season ever. And playing in the college football playoff, Arizona State playing in a tough game, SMU, being right there as well. I mean, it's fun, right? This is parity, and you hear coaches, whether it be at high schools trying to get their guys to buy in, or you're like a low level D1, you're like, hey, if you can play ball, we'll find you, right? If you can play some football, someone will find you somewhere, and you'll be given this opportunity. Yeah. I can't help but think, look, a couple of those guys that you mentioned, Rod. Let's include like a Sam Levitt in there as well. These guys overlooked, kind of put down, as Coach Dillingham over at Arizona State kind of put it in his own words. He said a lot of guys came here because they didn't have another chance, right? They didn't have another place looking at them or offering them. And we provided them an opportunity to play Power 4 football with the belief that one day that they'll be in to a position to play for the NFL or whatever. I look more and more across college football thinking that's the new normal, right? There's a few other programs. Vanderbilt's one of them. It's really interesting. Colorado with their run going on right now. Iowa State in the Big 12. Obviously, the SEC is a little tougher because you're building and working against the Georgias, now a Texas in that fold. So it's always interesting in the way that programs are built, but the one constant remains, and it's always a good head coach. It's always a coach that's on the cutting line of what the sport is providing, or at least has somebody in his front office that understands that you can have a good roster built from the high school ranks, but you've got to complement it with something out of the portal. And Texas is doing just that right now. And I'm really, maybe more so than anything, excited from what's going to come out of the spring with what Texas is going to pull out of the portal here in, I believe, 28 days is when the portal opens up once again, April 16th.
Yeah, we'll be following that here on the On Texas Football channel. And I'd also say to the beginning of that conversation about the SEC sliding, if indeed Brian Kelly and LSU are doubling their NIL investment and I know they brought in a lot of speed on the outside. They have Garrett Nussmeier. If they get that defense close to right, they're going to be good again. Florida with Billy Napier and DJ Lagway, they went into the portal pretty heavy. They could be back, and I don't think Alabama is going to be behind too long. Same with Georgia, and Texas is right there in the SEC. I think this could be a bounce back year because, Rod, this the passion of the fans. They demand it. I mean, they demand it. That's not good enough. We didn't make the tournament. We gotta double down, and whatever we have to do, we need to be back into this conversation. And that's when there's the fuel behind it. If you have the right coach, it'll get better.
Yeah, the right coach is key to CJ's point, because the right coach will institute the right culture, right? I'm not trying to hate on the Aggies, but the Aggies are a prime example of how not to do it in the NIL era, right? When they got that historically ranked recruiting class and Nick Saban was upset. They even hurt Nick Saban's feelings because he was like, oh, they paid for that class, right? He's upset about it because they was shelling out big money. And it was the cautionary tale that, yeah, of course, the Aggies got tons of money, man. They got a lot of it, that you can have the money and the resources and even get the players. But if you don't have the culture and you don't have the coach and you don't have the scheme, that'll evaporate. That'll disintegrate before your very eyes, like it did in front of Aggie fans. And that's when I think everybody realized, yeah, you can have the money and then you can get the players with it, but you can't keep them these days if you ain't got a good coacher, because they all going to leave if they ain't happy. And if you ain't got a good coach that can maximize the talent when it's on campus, also doesn't matter. So it's weird, because I agree. There's a lot of guys who, and you guys brought up Vanderbilt. That's a great example. Indiana's another great example you brought up, where they had the right coach, and then they were able to probably get some resources, but then they maximized every little bit of NIL resources that they had, and they came up with a unique plan, all right, that set them apart. And I think that's what some schools have to do. If you're not, Texas or Ohio State, it's easy. Their blueprint, spend as much as you can, go get the best coaches, get the best players, and make your run. But if you ain't one of them schools, and that's 90% of college football, you better come up with a very unique plan to compete. And that's why you got to give a guy like, we make fun of Dabo Swinney, you got to give him some credit.
Yep.
Right? Because he kind of went a way that most people don't go during the NIL train night. He's getting some guys via the transfer portal now, but he kind of mocked it and made fun of it. But he doubled down on his own culture. He's like, no, we got our own culture here. We're going to do our own thing. Right. Yeah. And I just think that he just kind of set himself apart. And now he's recruiting Clemson guys. You got to be a Clemson guy, man. We ain't like everybody else around here. They want to pay you to do this. No, we want Clemson. Whatever that means. I don't know what it means. But he is crafting his own coach. I think Sark is doing the same thing too. There are a lot of folks that have kind of complained about Texas, that Texas they don't money whip players. There's behind the scenes, so that Texas doesn't money whip. They don't come with the money first, and that's why Texas usually ends up cleaning up in the recruiting classes toward the end of the recruiting cycle, because Texas bets on themselves once they see us winning games, competing for championships, and they see our players getting these accolades and getting all this other, the players will go, you know what? I think I like that Texas offer even more. That Texas offer look pretty sexy. And now this other school may have offered me about $50,000 more, but honestly, that $200,000 they were offering looks pretty damn good right now over that $250,000 other schools offering that ain't, you know what I mean? And then they start to do the math on their own.
You the total package kind of thing. Yeah, I like that.
And I think Sark, I've talked to people, that's what Sark banks on. Like Sark don't start with the money. I'll compare it to dating. Like when I went to the NFL, I had to I had some money for the first time, and women knew I had money. I had to make sure the women I was dating weren't gold diggers because they knew I had some money. So when I initially early dates, even though they expected me to take them to Ruth Chris and ball out, I would go modest date first. We'd sit at a bar, get some appetizers, a couple of drinks, and then she'd be like, what is going on here? Or I'd go get some Chick-fil-A and we go get a picnic in the park. She's like, what is going on? This dude is an NFL player. Why isn't he showering me in lavish gifts? And I was concerned, like, well, I got to go through 4 or 5 dates, knowing she's got a good attitude about the modest approach, and then boom, then I'll show you a little bit more. Right? Because I got to make sure she got to pass the gold digger test. I think Sark has a gold digger test too with his players, in a sense, where I want to make sure they're not all about the money. Let's talk, know each other. Let's learn about, let's connect on a level about football and about, humanity and, what you like as a person. And then we'll get into the money. I think it makes him uncomfortable to talk about the money first. And it makes him feel like a bit of a trick. Sorry if the else don't know that term, but he doesn't want to feel like
no,
that.
I think that's right. And that's an advantage Texas has. There's going to be money there at the end of the day.
There's money
right, for the player.
Yeah.
They know that.
Yeah.
But if you don't lead with that, and you're leading with 14 NFL draft picks this year potentially, and development and education for mama, and the school in Austin, and come play with great players, and these top coaching staff, those things, as you're seeing Longhorns win awards and get draft picks and blow up the combine, that's what players want. They want that big picture show. Texas can present it all. And the money might be a little bit less than somebody else, but it's still pretty good money. And you're living in Austin. And if you perform, the money will grow. If you get on the field and you blow it up. I like the bigger picture mindset. That's a cool conversation because, I didn't even mention in the SEC, Shane Beamer in South Carolina could be into this mix next year with Lenora Sellers. They could be a player. I think there's some teams in a bounce back year for the SEC potentially. Because you think about last year, only Texas and Ole Miss came in with quarterbacks that were returning really as far as contenders with Quinn Ewers and Jackson Dart. Everybody else was kind of breaking in a new QB. Well, now, Lagway's back and Garrett Nussmeier's back and Lenora Sellers is back and Pavia is back. And, it's Texas that's breaking in a new quarterback in Arch Manning. It's going to be fun to watch. And I think, we can't judge it in snapshot on 1 year. But it's now 2 years where the Big Ten has won the national championship. So everybody's going to make a big deal about that for sure. But good conversation. Let me tell you about Mark Saunders. We're going to get into this Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah mock draft coming up. Two of the top out there, the Move the Sticks guy and the Godfather, Mel Kiper, with their mock drafts 3.0 coming out of free agency and who's filled holes and how that changes the draft plan. But I do want to tell you about Mark Saunders and his team. Listen, I always say this, if you put your head on the pillow tonight, to go to sleep, and we've had these windstorms and dust storms and tornadoes and everything that's going on, these crazy storms. Do you have everything protected and under one umbrella? That's where the Texas alum Mark Saunders and the team at Allstate really wants you to rest easy every night, where it's you have everything covered. It's the only insurance agent you'll need. Everything from your home, extra another home too, maybe a vacation spot. Cars, boats, motorcycles, RVs, ATVs. If you want someone to make sure that everything is covered, and does it in a very high caliber way, so you do rest easy for you and your family. Mark Saunders is your go-to every time in the Austin Round Rock area for sure. Travis and Williamson County. Give Mark a call tomorrow morning, 218-8571. They'll give you a thorough review of what's going on. Make sure you're in a good place and give you an offer that's going to cover everything, get you a great number that's going to be budget friendly. So again, before you sleep tonight, ask yourself, are you in good hands? With more than 35 years of experience, you will be with a Texas alum who loves the On Texas Football Channel, loves the Longhorns. You can talk a little Longhorn stuff while you're going through it. 512-218-8571. That's 512-218-8571. And hook up with Mark Saunders and his team at Allstate, 35 years. All right, guys, this morning it is, in addition to March Madness and brackets and who's going where, Final Fours. Well, the Final Four, by the way, in San Antonio this year, kind of interesting. Could be a pretty dynamic four down in the Alamo City. But Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah. Mel Kiper, of course, is the lead. And I know Matt Miller has joined that crew, our friend Matt Miller at ESPN. They've got some other guys, but Mel Kiper is the godfather of that whole thing and that whole realm back into the 80s. And then Daniel Jeremiah is the lead guy for the NFL Network. They have both put out mock drafts coming out of free agency. We know, there's a post-combine mock draft that kind of changes some minds, talking to everybody in the world at the combine. Then the free agency period comes, teams fill holes through free agency, and it maybe changes their draft plan. Like the Chicago Bears maybe not thinking offensive line because they signed 3 offensive linemen before this draft. But as it pertains to the Longhorns, is it fair to say Mel Kiper, Rod, doesn't have the Longhorns as high as a guy like Daniel Jeremiah in his mind, because they do seem to be lower than the other top draft analysts for Mel, the Longhorns? Meanwhile, just for the Longhorns, Daniel Jeremiah has Matthew Golden and Jahdae Barron at 11 to the 49ers. Did I see that right? And I know your guy Kyle Shanahan would love Jahdae Barron in his secondary. And then Matthew Golden to the Cowboys at 12.
Yep.
And then Kelvin Banks a little bit later down at 21, I think. Meanwhile, for the Longhorns, for Mel Kiper, it's a little later. It's, Kelvin Banks, 31, for crying out loud, all the way at the back end of the first round. What are your thoughts on both of those mock drafts that you've seen? I mean, those 3 Longhorns are going to go in the first round. It's just really where they slot in round 1.
Yeah, Mel Kiper. Mel Kiper has been a little bit lower on the top Longhorns in this class, and that's honestly since the beginning of the process. And the combine really didn't change that. But he's still now officially, I believe his first mock draft, he didn't even have 3 Longhorns in the first round. Now at least he has the kind of the consensus among the mock drafts. And I'm kind of a mock slut, so I'll look at anybody mock drafts. Is that Texas will have 3 Longhorns drafted in the first round. It will be, Jahdae Barron, Matthew Golden, Kelvin Banks. We don't know the order, though. I will say that the order, it used to be Kelvin Banks was always going to be the first one taken off the board. The order has changed significantly since the combine. Now you're seeing, and the Daniel Jeremiah one was really interesting, as you pointed out. He's got Matthew Golden essentially as the first, Travis Hunter's the first athlete being taken there, wide receiver, cornerback. But I think he's got him ahead of Taturian McMillan. If I'm not, he's got Ted Millen going 22. He's got Matthew Golden going 12 to the Cowboys. So in terms of the first, true receiver, he's got Matthew Golden as the first true receiver coming off the board, but he's got Jahdae Barron as the first Longhorn. We had this conversation too, could Jahdae be the first Longhorn off the board post-combine? Darren Jeremiah certainly thinks so, going to the 49ers.
Well, look at that. I mean, CJ, those 2 guys right there on the screen, Jahdae and Matthew, 2 great players. There are, from 1 year to the next, in a 365-day run, those 2 players may have improved their stock more than any players in this draft. I mean, Jahdae Barron was told to go back to school, meaning day 3 pick. Now he's number 11 to the 49ers. And Matthew Golden was kind of the 3rd receiver that transferred in for Texas, along with Isaiah Bond and the Oregon State kid that's escaping my head here. But Golden comes in, and these two dudes blow up, and now they're top 12 picks potentially, according to Daniel Jeremiah. That is big time development. And to everything we just talked about, Rod talking about you don't lead with the money, lead with this. Where you come to Texas, you're gonna go from here to here. If you just listen, follow the plan, you could be a top 15 draft pick. That's crazy cool.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this first round in its entirety, right, when you include Kelvin Banks too, you really hit on all 3 facets of the recruiting world, right? You take the high 5-star guy, the national recruit, 3 years and 3 out, right? He's off to the draft in the first round, right? You can prove that you can take an elite talent and make him remain on that trajectory to go in the first round. Then you go back to Jahdae Barron. This was a 5-year guy. He wasn't a celebrated recruit, having flipped late from Baylor. You could also add Alfred Collins into the conversation too, right? Guys who it took a while for them to get going, yet first round, right? Alfred Collins is going to end up in the second round. And then, of course, the portal, right? Texas going out again, finding a guy that fits the culture, fits the scheme, blows up, has the best season of their career, ends up going in the first round. Adonai Mitchell last year followed this same mold. So it's more proof that Texas can sit down in the spring when these, the 2026 and 27 recruits come to campus and say, why should I come to Texas? Well, on top of winning football games, on top of living in a great city, on top of a great education, we got coaches that can develop you regardless of where you're from, regardless of what your status or pedigree is. And that's a big bonus, right? That's something that every team claims to have in their repertoire. But until you're able to sit back on an April night, turn on the draft and see that Longhorn logo up there on a Thursday while the draft is going on in the first round, you can't really prove that to be the case. So Texas is going to be able to do that, and they're doing it at corner, wide receiver, and the offensive line. And it's the first time in a while for the offensive line to be celebrating day one pick. So this is a great marketing scheme again for the Longhorns. We talked about it last year with Worthy. We talked about it with Adonai Mitchell winning the combine. Byron Murphy also doing well in that conversation too. Backing that up 2 years in a row. Tremendous news for Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's well said, CJ. I mean, the advertising part of it, 5-star recruit that developed and, was 3 in, 3 out, a 5-year guy that was told to come back and, did. And the program worked with him, Rod. The NFL told him last year, hey, we need to see you play corner. We need to see if you can actually play out the physicality and the athleticism to play outside, which, not only did he go want to do, but Sark and PK trusted him to do it. And he played it at a high level, won the Thorpe Award. And then Matthew Golden comes in for 1 year, blows up, becomes the most reliable target for the Longhorns, huge catches down the stretch, and has the great combine. And now to that point, all 3 types of players you're going to get are showcased. And that sells. That sells. That we're hitting 1,000 here as far as the development goes.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's fascinating. The different paths that we've seen from these guys, but it all ends in the same place. Like I said, every player that comes to Texas, and this is the case for all recruits who are playing high school football, all prospects who are being recruited, they all have one goal. They all have one thing in common in terms of one goal in common. They all want to play in the league. Every last one of them. I ain't met one kid yet that's playing ball in high school that don't want to play in the league. They all want that. And so no matter if you're recruiting guys in 1999 when I was being recruited, or you're recruiting them in 2025 right now, one thing that you can recruit to. Hey, I can get you to the league. And if you got a track record of guys getting to the league, and he's already watching the guys that you put in the league, that's why Coach Akina, I think, is going to be so fun coming back here. That is the greatest recruiting pitch you can have. Now, I know NIL right now is probably rivaling that, all right, because NIL is a monster. So NIL is probably the top recruiter right now. But other than that, man, helping me accomplish my NFL dreams. If you can convince me that you can do it, I'm all yours.
Yeah. Well, and I think to that point, I mean, the high school recruiting is still the backbone of the program. But back-to-back years, CJ, you said it, A.D. Mitchell and now Matthew Golden have come in to try to fire up their draft grade, and gosh, did they ever? I mean, right. 42 overall for Adonai. I mean, Matthew Golden could be as high as 12, as you just saw there with the Cowboys. I just think it allows Sark and the staff to, as you said, Rod, not lead with the money.
Yep.
They don't have to money whip people. They're the big picture in people that says, hey, man, you come here, you're going to be, the money will come. We're going to make you're going to make some money while you're here, get a great education. But, man, you're going to get developed at the high level. That's big time for sure. And it just sends a great message through the locker room, too. I mean, it's and because you can't speak to that enough, Rod, that our way works. Like, it's case in point. Like, anybody wants to bellyache about it or doesn't like the way, or Torrey Beckton or any of these coaches, hey, man, hit the streets. We're good. We're doing it right.
And nothing more inspiring than guys who are in that position room with that player who now gets to either walk that stage, get drafted in the first round, whatever, make their NFL dreams come true. Because then the path is so real to you. You can taste it. At that point, you can taste it, right? Your boy is texting you like, oh, man, I'm in training camp now. Hey, man, you're going to be here pretty soon. Hey, man, he's coming back, showing love. That's when I remember I probably worked harder than I ever worked. And I was always obsessed and working for it. But when I started having guys like Quentin Jammer, in the same room with me, and a guy like Ahmad Brooks go to the NFL and tell me like, oh, no, you're an NFL player, bro. Trust me. I seen it. You can play in the league. Man, you're going to go, there's this new, found confidence you have when your former teammate and, your good friend, it goes there and has that experience and comes back and tells you like, oh no, you're on the right track. As a matter of fact, you're going to be fantastic. And that's happening now. That's that connection that the guys are having now. They're, all the old linemen now have, Christian Jones and then Kelvin Banks in the league and that kind of thing. And the DBs will have, Janae Barron in the league to talk to about that. And so that's part of that pipeline I talk about. When you built that pipeline, that's a big part of it too. That everybody in that room now, they can see the path. It is crystal clear to them. And they saw the guy before them work. They saw how they worked, how they were committed to the craft. And then that's how the lessons are passed down. And they got right now, it's happening. Like I talk to the guys via Third and Longhorn. Like, it's happening. Like, those guys are obsessed as Sark is with them accomplishing their goal, but as a group, but also individually.
I think that's great. And there's a lot of examples. I mean, Sark has talked about how DeAndre Moore came in and just copied Jordan Whittington. Whatever Jordan Whittington did, I'm doing that. And the running backs are doing it behind Bijan and Roshan and Jonathan Brooks.
Guess who's watching DeAndre Moore now? Next up, Dalen McCutcheon.
Yeah,
so it's going to trickle.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The pipeline is built, and that's credit to Sark. Because again, I think it's not just the money, and they don't lead with money. And I know it's easy to say, and it certainly helps. You'd rather be in Texas' spot financially than anybody else, really. But it's got to be built properly. On that, Rod, you and I are Texans fans, and you're a Cowboys fan, CJ. Excited about Matthew Golden, and I think you and I, Rod, Kelvin Banks is there at 25, and you don't have to go up to get him, and you can play him at left guard. And as you rebuild your offensive line, I mean that's like cartwheels to the commissioner on that Thursday night.
That'd be beautiful right there. And he's from Houston. So, and Caserio he said this openly multiple times. He said he actually loves guys from the Houston area. He said, now, of course, they got to be, they got to be on the board. It doesn't boost their stock with them or anything. But if they're making a determination on certain players and, in a certain round or with a certain pick, and they're from Houston, he said it is an added bonus. He said he likes that kind of pride on the team. He's talking. They got a lot of guys from the Houston area
for the city.
Yep, exactly.
Daniil Hunter from Minnesota last year was the latest example, right? He's from Katy and came in from the Vikings. I mean, those guys just they play for the H, I guess they say.
Yeah.
And Kelvin from Houston Summer Creek High would be absolutely in that mold, no question about it. Just north of Houston, up there in Humble, Atascocita area. Matthew Golden to the Cowboys. You like that, CJ, with CeeDee Lamb? That's not bad.
Whatever can give CeeDee Lamb some time away from a double team, I'm all in. I think Matthew Golden would be a great fit for him. I think I know there's only 3 or 4 wide receivers that you're looking at in the first round. It's not a great wide receiver class, but all of them look great if they had a star on their helmet for me. So Matthew Golden specifically with that speed, his route running ability to go next to a CeeDee Lamb, sign me all the way up.
For real.
And doesn't I know Kyle Shanahan's a good friend of yours, Rod, and a former teammate. Doesn't Jade Verandas feel like the type of player that they want? I mean, that's just an high IQ player that's going to fit into that culture as they're trying to purge the roster and kind of reload. Jade Verandas would be a great building block for them.
And they got Robert Saleh back as a DC now, right? Robert Saleh's back, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It's a DC. He would fit great with them. Honestly, I would. I know Shano was in town not too long ago, so I don't know what he was in town for specifically, but I don't know. He likes Texas guys, and he watches Texas guys because he watches Texas. So maybe he's already done some film study on Jahdae Barron or some background on Jahdae and the connections. I mean, he's good friends with Sark, that kind of thing too. So he probably already can reach out and get kind of the personal behind the scenes stuff about Jahdae Barron, which is all great. So I could see that happening. I really could.
Well, remember, Travarius Ward left to a free agency. Tafunga, their safety, left. I mean, they're losing key guys. Dre Greenlaw's gone on the defensive side. They need to start rebuilding that for Robert Saleh. And Jahdae, anybody that ever talks to the guy is like, I want him on my team. Then I watch the film. Okay, I want that dude for sure. What did y'all make of Mel Kiper having Jackson Dart as the 9th overall pick to the Saints?
I'll be losing it.
I don't like that at all.
Might be throwing about 83, missing the black by a couple inches these days, Aaron. I don't know. There's been a few head-scratching mocks I've seen from him recently, so I don't know. Maybe not dotting them up as he used to one day back in the day.
It's a weird draft because all teams have their draft pick, right? Their first-round draft picks.
Yeah, first time ever.
First time ever.
That is crazy.
Not a good sign for the talent overall in the draft. Usually teams are falling over themselves to try to, hey, I got to situate myself right here because I believe my player I want is going to fall right here. Not a lot of teams doing that because it's one of those drafts where they're predicting this may be the most unpredictable draft.
Yeah, I see it.
Because they just, don't have a lot of great quarterbacks. Your receiver, you just talked about it, your receiver crop, not a ton of high-end talent with the receiver crop, but it's really deep in a lot of positions, but they're not premium positions, right? It's really deep at, tight end and D tackle and running back. and some of those positions that usually aren't necessarily glamour positions, but hey, you can help you build the damn roster with it. That's for sure.
Yeah, there are a lot of good players in this draft. I don't know if there's a lot of elite players outside of Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. Even the quarterbacks are seen as reaches, including that one, Jackson Dart as a 9th overall pick. But Kellen Moore, needs quarterback. And we talked about Quinn and Dart and Milrow. Who's that next guy? Tyler Shuck, the kid from Texas Tech, and then to Louisville, Oregon. He's rising in draft boards too. And there's a big 6'5" quarterback. Everybody's trying to reach for that QB position. Is so valuable. Cowboys will get a good running back, right, CJ? I mean, Cowboys need a couple. They need quarterbacks and receivers and cornerbacks.
They need a lot of help. A running back sure would be nice. I think I would go with a wide receiver at 12 over running back. But look, they need one of those too. I don't know if Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams is going to be moving the chains all too much. But look, it's a deep running back class. Almost one of the few positions in this draft where you look at and say, God, there's a lot of talent here. So get everybody, please. Boys.
Get everybody. Draft a running back in the first round of this draft. It would be the most Cowboys thing ever because it's such a deep running back draft. You can find a really good running back in like 3rd or 4th round. And of course, the Cowboys will wait till this draft to draft one in the 1st round. That's such a freaking Cowboys move.
Don't get me
remember, they don't have their 4th round pick because of the fun trade for Jonathan Mingo.
Oh, that's
Mingo.
He did great last year.
He was awesome.
Impact a wide receiver now.
Yeah, now they're going to take Mark. Now they have to take Matthew Golden because Mingo is, can't get open. Can't get open.
Cowboys, man.
Hey, let's tell them about Andy Ludicky one more time, Rod, and then we'll take some super chats if they're there and get on out of here on a Tuesday night.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much to Andy Ludicky and his team for sponsoring our Tuesday night live stream. If you're looking to diversify, you may be someone like me that has their hands in multiple businesses. Well, Andy can help you diversify by finding you different businesses that will fit your time allotment and your financial goals. If you've been stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you make or your schedule in general, just reach out to Andy today and give him a call at 404-973-9901, and he'll take you through a detailed process to help you find a business that will fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your financial destiny, you can give Andy a call today, 404-973-9901, or reach out to him via email at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. That's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Thank you very much to Andy Ludicky and his team for sponsoring our Tuesday night live stream.
No question about it. Quick update from the dish. Longhorns up 6-2 in the 6th inning. Fell behind early, 1-0, but all Longhorns since, and they are looking for 18 in a row. Longhorn basketball playing tomorrow night in Dayton, Ohio. 8:10 that tip time. If you're looking for that game, it's on True TV. True TV tomorrow night at 8:10. North Carolina and San Diego State will play tonight in that other play-in game for the 11 seed, 16 seed game going on right now. Good stuff there. All right, guys, fun stuff. Any super chats, Matthew? If not, here we go. What do you think of Pierce for Rice? Yeah, David Pierce, he took that top assistant job at Texas State to kind of stay local, not have to move. And then Jose Cruz Jr. jumped out at Rice, and I've been told he's trying to head back to pro ball because it's not going good at Rice. And David Pierce, where he was the top assistant for Wayne Graham through the great years at Rice, the College World Series years. That's cool. That's good for him. I think that's good people getting in good spots. That's a good place for him. He's got a lot of work to do at Rice, but good for David Pierce.
It's crazy that he's starting immediately. I don't know how often you see that. You certainly don't see that in football where
he's coaching the team this weekend.
It's insane, So he's walking into this season, I guess his time at Rice already with a win over the then number 1 team in the country, and they're just like, yeah, this ain't enough. Go suit up. We need you at third base. Right? That's crazy. I don't know if I've seen that in recent memory. It doesn't come to mind at all, but good for David Pierce. I think that's a great spot for him. Obviously, he's familiar with Rice, was previously there. He's familiar with the state of Texas and the recruiting aspects of that. Look, I don't think anybody roots for Rice to be down, right? There's no reason to. They're kind of a fun school to look at and say, hey, great academics, good at baseball. You don't get to do that with many schools anymore. So I hope Rice and David Pierce are a happy marriage. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think there's some scuttle down in Houston that they did it now and kind of forced the hand. I know David didn't really want to leave Texas State because he had accepted a job and he was doing a job for Steve Trout. And but Rice really pushed him. They needed a coach immediately. If he wasn't going to take it, they're going to look somewhere else. But University of Houston also could be in the market for a coach too, because Todd Whitting is kind of on thin ice, and maybe this was to get ahead of that, not let Houston jump in. So good for David Pierce. That's a good thing, and obviously Texas is happy with what they've done with Jim Schlossnagle for sure. Anything else there, Matthew? And then if not, we'll put a wrap on it. Thank you for that super chat, guys. Great stuff. Love being back next Tuesday, as we said. Gosh, but by next Tuesday we'll know of the Rodney Terry fate. I would guess, and the Longhorns either still playing or not, and maybe in search of a basketball coach. Texas women playing this weekend at the Moody Center. Texas and LSU playing this weekend in baseball, and obviously the Longhorns tomorrow night in men's basketball. Plus, if they win that, they'll play Friday night against Louisville, and if they win that, they'll play Kentucky on a Sunday. So a lot coming. What a week it's going to be. Head on a swivel week in Longhorn land. And then spring practice gets going, whatever that's going to look like, starts next week. So we'll be all over it. And of course, day by day, coffee and football tomorrow on the On Texas Football channel. Gentlemen, it's been fun.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for tuning
Love
in.
it.
I need to see your bracket, CJ. Good luck, my friend.
You'll see it in my trash.
Thank you, Matthew.